Welcome back to Capitol Review. I'm Matt Swenson. This is State Representative Kathy Brynaert. Welcome back, Kathy.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely, and I know that you folks have many difficult decisions to make here at the state capitol this year, and a lot of that is due to the impending $1 billion budget deficit brought on by the worsening economy.
That's right. When we started the session, we thought the deficit was $1.2 billion. Now it's calculated a little lower, but balancing that out, the next biennium has a larger deficit. So we're trying to look at this deficit and think forward to what the deficit in the next biennium at the same time. So some cuts that will help us balance the ongoing budget. Which is really important because at the same time that you're looking at this $1 billion deficit this session, you're also, like you said, looking at another $5.8 billion deficit next year when the legislature returns to the state capitol. So the decisions that you make now will really have an impact on what the session looks like next year. That's correct. But I think it's hard for anybody to imagine what it is like to get $1 billion hole filled by cutting the range of programs we have. And so we're challenged. Oh, definitely. And I know that that's why you want to get down to this work very early, putting together a bill that will cut roughly $300 million from the state budget early in the session so that when the federal government takes action on health care later in the session, you'll be able to make a more educated decision in terms of cutting health care and some other areas of the budget. Right. So I sit on one of the committees I sit on is Higher Ed and Workforce Development, and we passed out a budget cutting bill last week from that committee. At least we're moving forward that proposal. And it cuts additional money, unfortunately, from both the university and the MNSCU system. But we kept those cuts as low as we could, and we really tried our best to see that the campuses were protected as much as possible. And it just goes to show that all of these cuts are very difficult because many of these same areas were cut in previous sessions as well, looking at a $6.4 billion budget shortfall last session. Had to make many cuts, so what's left is really the meat and potatoes of what state government really does. That's right, and that's why we really need input from really citizens all across the state. But as citizens of my community, I'd ask you to keep discussing this deficit with me as your representative, because these are very tough decisions and they're really going to adversely affect a lot of people. And I know you're going to continue your best efforts to prioritize health care and education in the state of Minnesota, and I know that you serve on several of those committees. Can you tell us what you're seeing in those budget areas? Well, because those are our two largest budget areas, Matt, we're waiting for the last stage of our cutting process to address those, partly with Health and Human Services. We're waiting for the general assistance medical care issue to get resolved. And as you know, we have a tentative agreement with the governor, but now that new proposal has to move through committee. And it's not the most ideal proposal. It's sort of bare bones. But at least there's some level of service to the most needy. And I know that you folks are also paying close attention to what happens in Washington with the ongoing health care debate, because that could potentially bring some extra federal relief to the state of Minnesota. That's right. That's another reason that we'll wait to see where those federal dollars are before we make a final cutting proposal for Health and Human Services. Well, a lot of difficult decisions here at the state capitol, and this cutting won't be easy, and that's why it will take the rest of the session to figure this out. That's right. We'll continue the conversation, and we hope you'll stick with us and give us your input. Thank you so much, Representative Brynaert, for all that you do here at the Capitol and for being here in the studio today. Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here. You bet. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Capitol Review.